When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
If you didn't know before, now you know why they call this the FunBelt.
Very excited about the Sun Belt.
You know, while other conferences have been breaking up, our conference has become stronger.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
I saw FunBelt Conference, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I got to join the show. It sounds a lot of fun.
Back after a bye week. Who knew that there were bye weeks in the off season? But we are back together. FunBelt Podcast. Dusty Thibodeaux from Warhawk Report. Shane Mettlen from the Daily News Record, the Pulitzer Prize winning Daily News Record, and Jeremy Harper from HowlRaiser.com. Welcome back, guys. How did you enjoy the bye?
I first of all, I enjoyed my bye. Thank you very much. But you didn't refer to HowlRaiser as the Pulitzer winning sports blog.
I thought it would be
just as true. It would be just as true to call it.
Are you saying the Daily News Record has never won a Pulitzer? I thought they were just handing those out.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, when are you gonna get on that, man?
Oh, I need to.
No, man, I've had a great 2 weeks. You know, it was nice. It was relaxing. You know, well, not relaxing. I mean, I had shit to do. I had to mow my grass and get some stuff done. Shane, are you mowing grass back up east yet?
I need to. The day I was going to, it rained, and then I used that as an excuse to hold off on some yard work.
Yeah, you know what? I love that excuse. Like it rains a little bit, you're like, can't do any yard work. The yard's wet. Yeah.
But now it's a disaster because it all grew.
How about you, Tibbs? You live in Houston. I'm sure you've been mowing since January, right?
Outsourced. I have no idea when my yard gets mowed.
Oh, you're one of those guys that has people come over and mow your yard.
I got people, Jeremy. I got people.
I do too. They're 16 and 20 years old.
So you hire child labor is what I hear.
I don't hire, but I do command. I call up my sons the muchachos, and they get out there with the weed whacker and the lawnmower and do an absolute shit job. And I have to kind of go behind them and go, you missed this part, you missed this. And listen, you're supposed to weed whack here. It's just constant. They've been doing it for 2 years now, and they always do a bad job. I don't know what to say.
Speaking of a bad job, the conference did not do a bad job in the NFL draft.
Wow, that was quite the segue.
I do what I can there. 9 former Sunbelt standouts selected. Highest draftee, Nick Ciardello, I think is how you say it, headed to the hometown. He's headed to the Saints. Highest draft pick this year for the Sunbelt in the 4th round, 103rd pick. Just a few later, Jake Andrews from Troy headed to New England, long way from the plains of Alabama there in Troy, Alabama.
Yeah, 9 draft picks. I believe Sam from the Sunbelt all sent us a press release claiming that was the most from the Sunbelt. Did you get that press release?
It is the most. The
most. Last year we had 6. This year we had 9, but 3 of those 9 came from Old Dominion. One of the, in terms of wins and losses, one of the more mediocre teams. What does that say? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't know. Can't read the tea leaves on that. Is there something I should be reading from that, Shane?
I don't know. Quite honestly.
Well, while you're crunching those numbers, Shane, Tibbs, I'm going to give you some other numbers. And I want you to tell me what you think of this. Okay, so in 2022, the NFL drafted 48 G5 talents. That's 48 guys into the pros. This year, that number has sunk to 34. That's a 32% drop. Last year, the NFL drafted 15 group of 5 athletes, and that's not including players from Liberty and UConn, into the first 3 rounds, including 2 in the first round. This year, none in the first round, and only 5 in the first 3. What is happening here? If you, all right, before you make that judgment, if you look at how many people went to the draft this year, 80% from Power 5 programs. 80%. That is a huge number to me. So somebody said the portal. Is that it? Is that really what's happening here?
Yeah, I think that in their bio somewhere, they should have their full career stats, started out at ULM, Arkansas State, wherever, but then transferred to Miami, where they went on to be an all ACC performer and a second-round draft pick.
Yeah, so is it fair? Like a player spends 3 formative years, 4 formative, even 2 formative years at a group of 5 conference, spends 1 year, like, I don't know, at Kansas State or something like that, and then comes out a draft pick, and then Kansas State gets to say that's their draft pick. Is that fair? I don't know. I didn't crunch the numbers on that, by the way. I don't know how many of those drafted into the NFL got their start at G5 programs. I know anecdotally there were some that I recognized, but I don't know what the true numbers are. I wish somebody with like a research department, maybe in a fancy Pulitzer East Coast newsroom, would have the resources to dig that number up.
You're overestimating our resources.
I think interns.
Be like, newsboy, chop, I need this research now, pronto. Make it quick and there's a quarter in it for you. Chop. You don't have that?
I don't.
Oh, okay. But Shane, what do you think of that? Is it the transfer portal? Is it, or there's something else? I have sort of even a more sinister idea behind it, but is it something else at play?
I mean, I think, it's partly the portal. It's have to think about how many years you are going back, but the Power 5 leagues are getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more teams. I mean, like I said, I can't remember how far you went back, but once upon a time,
just a year.
Okay. But I mean, once upon a time, the Big 8 was the Big 8 with 8 teams, and now it's going to be whatever it is by the time it is next year. The Big 10 used to have 10. I'm old enough to remember when the Big 10 had 10 teams, if you can believe it. It's so I mean, there are more Power 5 teams than there used to be. I think so. It probably trends that way. A lot of players aren't finishing their career at a group of 5 school, especially we had the discussion about JMU the other day. They're losing a lot of people that have JMU degrees now and just have an extra year to play with. So they're like, I want to go see if I can play in the SEC or the ACC or whatever. And really prove that I was as good as those guys all along, or girls. It's happening in all sports.
Absolutely. And I don't blame the players.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them too. It's not even just, I want to test my skills at a better level. Some are like, hey, I'm looking to finish my degree or augment my degree. I can't get it here. Like, we had a kicker go to Notre Dame. What are you going to say? Don't go to Notre Dame.
And sometimes I think it's a combination right now of there's the portal and there's the COVID years. So a lot of people are just looking at that 5th or 6th year as a complete bonus. They're like, I went to the school I chose for 4 years. I got my degree. I'm graduated, but I've got this extra year to do whatever the hell I want or can think of or can pull off. And a lot of them are doing it. So I'm going to be really interested to see will be 2 years from now when there's no more COVID years left. Everybody that was playing in 2020 is already through. If we'll see as many people finishing as many really good players finishing their career somewhere else once they've stayed at the school for a while.
All right, that is all very sane and rational reasoning. Thank you, Shane. That's why you're here. you bring that sort of gravitas that Tibbs and I just simply cannot bring to the table. But here is my kind of conspiracy theory surrounding this. So 2 years ago, Cincinnati finally gets a group of 5 program behind the red velvet rope, right? We get a group of 5 member into the big playoff game. Oh, we could do it. It's technically possible now. The doors have been swung wide open. It's like when Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. It was like, we can hit home runs. Let's start doing it. That's who it was for the group of 5. We could be part of this club. And ever since that happened, the Power 5 poached 3 premier group of 5 teams, plus BYU, which I never counted as a group of 5 team. They sort of poached their own weaker conferences, poaching the Big 12 and the Pac-10 or the Pac-12, kind of took away some of their good toys. And now they've got this idea that they looked around, they're looking around for some more poaching to do before it ends. They seem to be propping up Tulane, which I can't understand. I read a report today that the Pac-12 is looking at Tulane, which is only 1,900 miles away from USC. It just doesn't seem like much of a fit, but they're honestly, seriously considering it. Is this just a matter of the Power 5, once again, feeling threatened by the group of 5 and saying, okay, we're just going to move the goalposts again? And the evidence is right here in the NFL draft. Thibodeaux, talk me down from this ledge.
Yeah. I think that it's a transfer. I think that you kind of lose your identity whenever you're leaving the G5 Sunbelt Conference and going into the P5. Adios. You're now a member of Texas, Bama, wherever you sign. And so that's where it's going to show up that you're from. I think it's pure and simple, whether that's that you're taking advantage of that COVID year, like you said, or just I made a mistake because I went to this too small a school and I was too big of a fish.
Or they were good enough to develop you into a big fish. But besides that, are you guys like me? Did you guys watch the NFL draft?
Watch a little bit of it, but here's the question I have for you. There were 9 picks. Was anybody really a surprise of them falling where they went? And I'm talking about our 9 picks in the Sun Belt. And was there anybody that went undrafted that you felt was going to be in that mix? Shane, I'll kick it over to you.
I thought Todd Centeio had a pretty good shot at going in the 7th round. Ended up not going. Sometimes it's better for these guys because they end up signing at a place where, they have some input where they're going, where they think they can make a team or a practice squad or something. But I did think maybe he had a chance of going late, just where he was slotted amongst the quarterbacks.
Jeremy, any shocks for you?
Yeah, I had a list of people that I thought could get drafted, right? And the list was based mostly off of what other people are saying. I'm not a huge evaluator of talent. I was surprised to hear Cooper Hodges from Appalachian State get called. And I was also surprised to hear Southern Miss's Eric Scott Jr. get called. Both are good players, don't get me wrong. They just weren't on my radar. But the one guy who, Mel Kiper always has this list at the bottom of the broadcast, right? The 10 best available, right? On that list for like 5 hours was poor Jason Brownlee, the wide receiver out of Southern Miss. It was like the number 2 or the number 1 best available for like 5 hours and never heard his name called.
Did get the undrafted free agent, though. He is going to be a Jet. Coincidentally, the Jets picked my falling star, tight end Zach Kuntz. He was not a 7th rounder. I thought he was a day 2 guy, especially after he went and just kind of dominated that NFL combine. I expected him to be a 3rd, maybe 4th round draft pick. The fact the Jets got him as late as they did, it's kind of a steal, but I thought that he was a lot better of a player than where he wound up being drafted.
Yeah, the analysis guys were talking about, well, he got hurt, and so that's why he fell. But I was surprised too. You're right. That was a big surprise to me. In fact, we kind of dominated the 7th round this year. But yeah, I expected Kuntz to be one of the first people off the list.
Yeah, I do wonder if the injury maybe was a big part of that. Teams just wondering where he stands, how healthy he's going to be. Because I mean, no denying NFL size and talent with that guy.
Now
I remember standing by him at Sunbelt Media Days, and I was just dwarfed.
He was so big. I said to Tibbs, "Who is that guy?" I thought like a basketball player had wandered in.
He looks like he could play left tackle, but he runs like a tight end. I mean, yeah.
I guess he did get injured, which I probably hurt that. But there was a lot of tight ends selected this year, and a lot of them I thought didn't measure up to Kuntz. But another guy that tragically didn't get picked up, it was the all-time leader in tackles, Carlton Marshall. But we've seen that before, right? Where a great college player just doesn't seem to have the measurables for the NFL draft. So I don't know if Carlton Marshall got his UFDA, but the all-time leader in tackles did not hear his name called during the NFL draft.
Yeah, but you got to remember, he was a small guy. Yeah. And the people that run the draft are always going to try to find the reason not to draft you, then find the reason to draft you. And I think that his height, while it worked out for him in college, worked out for him every which way in his career, the NFL guys don't like short people.
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, the Sunbelt Defensive Player of the Year came out of Arkansas State a couple times. Defensive ends. Don't ask me their names because I slowly forget them. But they were undersized. They made a lot of tackles at defensive end, but they were not NFL sized, and then they did not get picked up. So I feel like that's something with the Sunbelt. I think that's why we're seeing some NFL draft success now. I mean, the Sunbelt came behind only the American in terms of group of 5 conferences putting people in the NFL draft. Although the AAC had a down year, I think in 2022 they put something like 24 guys in the draft. This year they only had 10. But that's another story. That's another complaint for me. But Sunbelt right behind them. It's kind of more evidence to say that we as a conference have caught up to the American in a lot of ways. And this needs to be another proof point that the Commissioner Gill, our good friend, frequent guest, Commissioner Gill, needs to bring up and maybe rub it in the face of Mike Oresco if he can, which I'd be 100% behind.
A couple other notable free agent signings. Kevon Bennett, running back for Arkansas State, headed to the Falcons. Todd Centeio to the Chiefs. James Jeremy.
Jason
His
Blackman,
first name
right?
is James.
Is it Jason?
He's headed to South Beach in Miami. Jason Brownlee to the Jets, as we said. Boogie Knight headed west to the Chargers. Cameron Peoples to the Panthers. Stephen Jones Jr. to the Titans. Chase Bryce, something I didn't know you could actually do, 2 tryouts. He is trying out with the Jets and the Falcons, but has not signed an official UDFA.
Okay, so I've heard some guys saying that they've got rookie camp invites, which sounds to me different than UDFAs. Is that like where you could get a UDFA?
You could get a UDFA or a practice squad slot. Okay. More than likely a practice squad.
So the UDFA is like, here's some money, come join us. Rookie camp is maybe we'll give you a shot at trying out and see if you guys can get in.
Think of UDFA as a preferred walk-on.
Uh-huh.
You got a spot, but we'll probably cut you pretty quickly. Uh-huh. Rookie camp is the open tryouts, so you can hopefully become a PWO.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised Cam Peoples didn't get as much talk or as much. He just seemed like a prototype running back. But running back, I guess, is just you better have those super skills. But I don't feel like running back did very well in the draft this year. So maybe that was part of it too.
And not be a part of a team that way underachieved.
Well, he still had 3 come out of Old Dominion. So I don't know. And Stanford had 3 wins this year, put 5 guys into the NFL. I was like, what is going on here?
That's been sort of a debate amongst JMU fans. Is they haven't had a lot of guys drafted for all the success they've had. And a lot of JMU fans are like, why not? What are we doing wrong? We're not getting drafted. You're recruiting an entire team of very good college players and you win. Would you rather have that than, like, say ODU, where you've got 3 athletic freaks, but you don't have a whole team of guys who can play at the college level? Like, I think you kind of got to take the good with the bad there and decide how important the draft really is to you.
Yeah, I think that especially works in the Sun Belt, where you can just recruit a lot of really solid guys and have a great football team.
And sometimes guys are coming to the Sun Belt because they're undersized or they're fast, but they haven't learned how to play a position or whatever it is. And, would you rather have one Khalil Mack coming out of Buffalo on a horrible team, or would you rather have a bunch of UDFAs and rookie camp guys who, help you win games?
Now, I do know that when it comes to recruiting, there is nothing that lights up recruits' eyes than when you say, oh yeah, we put in 3 guys in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
You should come here to Old Dominion. Maybe we'll put you in the NFL too. And I know that has been a big sore point for Arkansas State fans. From 2007 to 2014, we put in at least 1 guy every year, and it felt good. I mean, we're winning games too, but it just felt good to do that. It was like, all right, we're advancing kids. We're a program where you can make that leap. We haven't done that since 2014, and it's beginning to give us a complex. When was the last ULM guy to go? It hasn't been that long.
To be drafted?
Yeah.
I believe it would be Marcus Green.
Yeah.
When he was drafted to Atlanta 5-ish years ago.
Yeah, I remember that surprised the hell out of me. He wasn't on my board, and it happened.
It happened. Got cut pretty quickly. But that's also part of the business that I think a lot of guys don't realize is the draft giveth, the draft taketh awayeth also.
Yeah, absolutely.
One other draft note, we're headed north also. The Raging Cajuns punter Reese Burns, drafted by the Montreal Alouettes of the CFL.
Yes. Oh, hey, here's another side bit I noticed. First of all, I always watch day 3 of the NFL draft. It's my favorite part because it goes by quick. I'm likely to see a name I recognize. I watch the whole damn thing. I watched 5 hours of drafting on Saturday, but it was kind of funny. Our good friend Brandon Silver showed up because he was leading his XFL team after the draft in a big game that was coming up in the XFL. And he was out there warming up and he's starting for his team. So it was good to see an old Sun Belt campaigner out there, Brandon Silver, legendary quarterback for Troy.
He's a Sun Belt legend.
Yeah. But yeah, Sun Belt legend Troy. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, but still, it was great to see him out there. I think there were a couple other Sun Belt guys out there too. So it was fun. It was kind of a neat thing to see.
One team that did not have a player called on the NFL draft, TxSt. But we got the inside scoop of what the Bobcats are looking like with new head coach GJ Kinne in the spring when we caught up with Keff Ciardello. Win now or get bent, the best podcast name other than FunBelt Podcast, of course. Never say it. Keff Ciardello.
There you go. You nailed it.
You got a new head coach. You went through the spring. Tell us, what are these Bobcats going to look like when the fall rolls around?
I think it's going to look a lot different than it looked in the spring, specifically on the offensive line. I've already seen the Bobcats. Some of them entered the transfer portal, like David Hensley. I'm blanking on the other one that hopped in. Oh, yeah, Jackson Schultz, who's actually pretty good backup left tackle. They hopped in the portal this week, and you've seen them hand out a bunch of offers. Yesterday, they handed one out to a Texas Tech offensive lineman, another Troy offensive lineman. They've got a commitment from Marcus Alexander from Oklahoma. They're looking at another guy from Oklahoma named Bray Walker. So they're looking at a lot of offensive linemen. I think they went into the spring and they lost a few starters to the transfer portal, like Kyle Hergel and Dalton Cooper. Hergel, he went off to Boston College and Oklahoma State for Dalton Cooper. But that being said, whoops, sorry, I clicked out of the Zoom real quick. There we go. All right, I was turning off my text notifications. But yeah, so they had some guys enter the portal, some other guys graduate, like Russell Baker, Richard West. So their whole starting lineup on the offensive line from last year is gone, and even a couple of the really good backups at the beginning of spring camp. Silas Robinson, who's going to be the starting center, he entered the transfer portal, went to Incarnate Word. So there's a lot of shifting at that spot specifically, and we saw that in the spring game, where it was the defensive line for the Bobcats was having a field day against TxSt. So they definitely need to clean up that offensive line. They've introduced this fast-paced offense where they basically sprint to the ball every play, and they're all constantly in a hurry-up set. And they need these offensive linemen to be on point with that and be able to rush to the ball. And now coming over from Incarnate Word, GJ Kinne and 6 of the other coaches, they brought over a bunch of players, and a bunch of those players were 5 offensive linemen. They're bringing over 8 total Incarnate Word players, 5 on the O-line. Few of them are starters, like Dorian Strawn. The left tackle is Nash Jones. So Caleb Johnson as well in there at guard. So these guys are familiar with Kinne and their system. So I feel like we'll still see them come the fall. Like they're still going to be in the mix and possibly in that starting lineup. But I think there's going to be a new center. I think there's going to be a new guard, new tackle. There's going to be a lot of new pieces on that line. And I think that will go a long way for getting this offense to look the way they want, look the way when it was the number 1 offense in the nation last year at Incarnate Word with that whole system. Because they brought over the offensive coordinator, they brought over full staff. So they're running that offense that they had at Incarnate Word that was averaging 50-something points a game. And in order to do that, starts on the O-line, and they really got to fix that. So it's going to look different at a lot of positions. I think they're looking to add more receivers, even more defensive backs, defensive linemen, and even a quarterback. I mean, they're talking to Central Florida quarterback Thomas Castellanos. He came out to the spring game 2 days after entering the transfer portal. So to get him to come on a visit tells me that they're seriously looking at him. Not sure what's going on with that. I haven't seen a commitment or anything of that nature. I'm sure he's still weighing his options, but it's telling the fact that they're still looking at a quarterback despite bringing in Malik Hornsby from Arkansas, former 4-star guy at a high school, a terrific athlete. He was coveted by some big schools like Nebraska, wanted him to play receiver, comes to TxSt so he can play quarterback, feels confident that this coaching staff believes in him. And then they go out and they look at another quarterback when they already have 4 in the room. They're going to have 5 when PJ Hatter, a high school prospect they signed, comes in. So, they have Hornsby now, CJ Rogers looking like the number 2, Ty Evans, who's a North Carolina State transfer, former Elite 11 quarterback, pretty good guy himself, and then Derek Motta, he's the scout guy, and then PJ Hatter coming in. That's 5. So if they were to bring in Castellanos, that's 6, and that's too many. So somebody's going to be gone. Don't know who that is or what capacity, or maybe they're going to roll with 6 quarterbacks. I'm not sure. But it's interesting. It's going to look a lot different. There's certain positions that are pretty set that aren't going to change much, really, at like running back and slot receiver. But they're going to add some more. And there's been, as of right now, when I'm talking to you, I've seen 4 guys enter the portal since Saturday, 2 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman, and a receiver. I expect there to be more. I don't know exactly how high of a number that's going to get to, but I expect there to be more for the Bobcats and for them to bring in a lot more transfers.
When the season kicks off, you won't even leave the state of Texas until right at the end of September, kicking off at Baylor, at UTSA, and then back-to-back non-conference home games with Jackson State, Nevada. Does that kind of help the new coaching staff kind of get things settled, or is that maybe a little bit of a detriment that you're really sleeping in your own bed and you don't get used to playing on the road for when you have that big road swing going to Southern Miss, to the Raging Cajuns, and then later in the year having to go to Coastal and to Arkansas State?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to look at it. That's definitely a good way where you get out of that routine of going on the road, staying in a hotel and all that stuff when you're really just hopping on a bus and going down to San Antonio, which is less than an hour drive, and to Waco, which is less than 2 hour drive. I personally love it. I'm going to go on the road, cover them. Usually when they go out of state in the Sun Belt, it's pretty hard for me to afford that travel because it's so far, because Texas State is kind of on an island in the state of Texas. So I think from that perspective, staying in state and playing some of these other teams for the program is good, for fans to be able to get to go and see them, and for just to curate some rivalries, in-state rivalries around here. Because, like I was saying, no other teams really around except for Louisiana and Arkansas State. They're right there, and ULM. But I get where you're coming from with that, where they don't get into that routine of an overnight in another town and all of that. But I don't think it's a detriment. I don't think it's a detriment or an advantage, really. I think it's these guys are athletes. They're going to go out and perform. I think a lot gets made about them going on the road and stuff. But even I know here at Texas State, even when they're playing at home, the whole team goes and stays at the NBC Suites a few miles down the road, like the night before. So everyone's all in the same area, and then they all get on a bus and then they drive to the stadium together. So they still get that routine, and they do that so that they can maintain that routine throughout the whole season. And I should say that's what previous coaches did. We'll see what Kinne does. I'm not sure, but I imagine he'll do the same thing. So I think they'll be pretty prepared for when they do eventually leave the state.
Not on this year's schedule, but I know it's a game that it's already circled by a lot of Bobcat fans. In 24, the in-state rivalry against the Bearcats comes back as they get ready to play Sam Houston State neutral field at NRG in Houston. How big is that game dating back to even the old Southland days or the 1AA days of Southwest Texas State in Sam Houston?
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I got to Texas State as a student 2007. My first season covering them for the student newspaper was 2008. And that was the last time this football program won any semblance of a conference championship. Similar to the JMU situation, they were actually gifted it because Central Arkansas had just transitioned up, and they actually had the better record and beat the Bobcats, but they couldn't take the title of Southland champs. So Texas State got it. But I digress. How they got that championship that year was they played Sam Houston State, very last game of the year, game went to overtime. Sam Houston State had Rhett Bomar as their quarterback. If anybody remembers that name, former Oklahoma guy, got in trouble there, had to transfer. And the Bobcats pulled it out and they won. And it was a big rivalry. It was in Huntsville. There were fans, Texas State fans there, and they even rushed the field in Huntsville. There weren't a ton, so they didn't fill the field. It wasn't like, what we've seen from some of these P5 games, these where they're just covering the field. But it mattered. They were out there to beat Sam Houston State, to win a conference championship was huge. And so that one always sticks in my mind for me, where it's just like, man, it was nice. That was a real rivalry. And that's unfortunately something that's been lacking here. Like they've tried to get something going with UTSA, and that's a legitimate rival, really. The fan bases and the schools, there's no love lost there. But it's been a lopsided rivalry. It's been 4-0 in favor of UTSA the 4 times that they have played in football. So it'll be nice for nostalgia. I don't know if it's going to be a legitimate continuation, something they'll do every non-conference. I think but it'll be good for that 1 year in 2024, and to play it at NRG is fantastic. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I personally am going to enjoy that. And I think Texas State's getting some money to play that one, like $500,000, something like that. So that'll be, So it's good for the Bobcats, good for both sides. I think good for Sam Houston State. I know they've been itching for sure to get a chance at playing Texas State. They for sure have reveled in the Bobcats' demise at the FBS level since they've moved up. That's one area of the country that's really enjoyed watching the Bobcats lose.
This past year, Bobcat basketball, we knew coming in that it was going to be a little bit of a strain with Asbury departing, but you still had Mason Harrell coming back. Maybe not the best regular season, but that postseason run to the semifinals before you kind of ran into the buzzsaw there of the Raging Cajuns. What was kind of TJ's reaction whenever the season was over and done with? Was he kind of pleased with that season? Were you pleased with it? And what was kind of the vibe?
You mean the regular season? I can say for sure where TJ's thoughts were after that post-game press conference after the last game. He was hot. He was not happy. He was calling guys out, which is very, I wouldn't say uncharacteristic, but he's just not one to do that. You know, he's usually a very positive, uplifting guy, but obviously that signals he was not satisfied with that season. And I felt like that propelled them into the tournament where they made it to the semifinals. That fire kind of lit under these guys, specifically Mason Harrell. You know, he was a fifth-year senior, played a lot of ball here, and I think he took that to heart. As far as the regular season, it was a tough season because they actually led the nation. I think they were second in the nation in injuries as far as starters who missed time. There was a graphic that they put up on the ESPN Plus broadcast that I'd be butchering if I tried to repeat it specifically, but there was one other team that had more starters out for more amounts of time, and it would be staggered injuries. It'd be like Mason Harrell's out for a few games, and then Nate Martin, and then they would never coincide. But because of that, there was never any chemistry. They couldn't get there and build it throughout the season, and then they started to get somewhat healthy towards the tournament, and that's when you saw them. They actually, you know, the 2 years past, they've won the regular season Sunbelt Championship. And then this year, they didn't win it, but they went further in the tournament than they had in those other 2 years. Because those other 2 years, win the regular season championship, and then they go to the tournament and lose right off the bat in the quarterfinals. This time, they actually made it to the semifinals. So it's I wouldn't call it a victorious season or a season that they're truly satisfied with, but they at least got back some pride in that tournament, where it was a really tough go in the regular season, especially in conference. And then for them to show up in the tournament and actually play with some grit, I think that goes a long way for this program. But it's tough. You know, Mason Harrell, we were just talking about, he's gone now. I mean, 50-year guy. He almost didn't come back last year and chose to come back. So it was nice for him after he made that choice to come back, and then they make it to the tournament and he's able to have some success. I think that was nice for him, because that regular season was definitely not what I'm sure he envisioned when he wanted to come back. But yeah, losing Mason Harrell, losing Drew Drennan, they're going to have some vacancy at the guard position. And there was a couple other guards, Brandon Davis, some other guys deeper on the roster that entered the transfer portal. But a big player that entered the transfer portal, you know, literally and figuratively big for the program and big in stature. He's like 6'8". Nate Martin, he entered the transfer portal, and he's actually off to Marshall. So staying in the Sun Belt, he was a starter for the Bobcats the last 2 seasons consistently. And he's going to get you 8 points, 6 rebounds about every night. So, you know, sometimes that's an average, you know, he'll get into double digits in both categories sometimes as well. He's a good presence in the paint off to Marshall in Sunbelt rival. But that's going to be some big losses for this team. You know, they've made some signings. They got a nice local guy named Caden Gums from San Marcos High School, who's a really good point guard. But there's I expect maybe a little bit of a drop off next year, but you never know with TJ. I mean, there was when they lost Sule and some other guys, there was expected bad drop off, and then they won the regular season championship. So Sule, another guy, he left for JMU and then ended up in the Sun Belt. They weren't in the Sun Belt at the time, but good for Sule. I think he's trying to go pro and everything. I really liked him. He was a nice guy when he was here.
So you mentioned your guy there that transferred within the conference to Marshall. ULM, same situation with Thomas Howell going from ULM to South Alabama. What are your thoughts on it? Because to me, I'm okay with it. I mean, if you're not happy here, go where you're going to get the play time you want. You're going to be happy with, you know, maybe a different coaching approach, more play time, more whatever. What's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a business decision for a lot of these guys. They're looking at their future. They're like, hey, I'm trying to do this to make some money later. And so when they look at the current area and situation they're in, and they're like, I'm not getting the minutes I want. I'm not getting I'm not in the right system that works for my skills. Then yeah, like I say go ahead and transfer. And I think fans specifically are coming around more to that, where it's just kind of the nature of the beast. Guys are going to come in, guys are going to come out, because the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away. You have plenty of other guys that come in from the transfer portal, and then you have guys that leave. It's just, I think it shouldn't be taken personal by fans that watch it. I know for me as an observer, I like it. I think it gives a lot more freedom to guys. You see somewhat of the gross side of it, where players are starting to get cut. I say cut in quotation marks, but it's however you want to say it, cut or phased out or what have you. You see it on the national stage, or at least the national media is talking about, like at the Colorado situation with Dion, and how many guys have come out and said, like, no, they told me to go enter the transfer portal. But I think that's part of it as well. That's an unfortunate side effect of it, is that like coaches can do that with the portal and let guys go. But I think it's necessary for what they do in their job as well. It's not really to blame coaches for using it this way. It's fascinating for sure. It's a fascinating development in college football. It's why, or college sports in general, I guess. And it's why I love covering college sports. It's just ever changing. You have to evolve with the sport. The transfer portal is very much part of it. It adds to a lot more to talk about in the offseason, that's for sure. For guys like us who are trying to do pods and everything, it's nice to be able to have some transfer portal talk.
Who knew? Probably about the time that we were both working. I think you were with Scout, I was with Rivals, that we would have discussions about college free agency.
Yeah, I know it. It's kind of fun though. I mean, I hope in the long run it benefits the athletes, whether that's financially or putting them on display for their like giving them some good tape to get noticed by some of pro teams in the future or whatever they're trying to do. But we won't know for a few more years, I think, what's the long-term effects of it. In my mind, I'm like, this is great. This is player empowerment. They have freedom. It also allows coaches, whenever they're like, man, we really need some players, like a new coach like Kinne right now, they're hitting the portal hard. And there's no doubt, I'm sure they've had those difficult conversations with some guys like, hey, we're not going to use you. And if you really want to go get on somewhere, like we suggest you hit the portal. I'm sure they're doing that with some guys as well. Like every coach in America is, a college coach, they're having these conversations. But I feel like in the long run, it'll be good for the sport. I just hope it doesn't find a way to take advantage of these athletes and the ones that don't necessarily have the power to get an NIL deal or anything like that they're getting shafted, which it seems like is happening in some of these situations. And I hope that there is a way to put up safety nets for that, and to protect some of those players. I think that needs to be discussed just as much as like, okay, how do we pay these guys? How do we do this? There needs to be with some of these guys who are promised scholarships and everything, and they show up and they dedicate and they commit these time, and then they're told, hey, you're out. I think there needs to be, I hope there is, and maybe I'm just naive and don't know what those guardrails are for those guys. But at the time now, it just seems like a lot of them are basically getting not kicked out of school, but their scholarship is gone. So if they want to stay at the school that they accepted a scholarship at, they got to pay for it. So it creates a whole caveat of issues that I don't know how to fix personally, but I'm interested to see how it plays out.
So it's springtime, obviously talking spring football, recapping basketball. There's also baseball, softball going on. How crazy is it that Bobcats, softball and baseball, right on the cusp of having a 30-win season and nowhere near the top of the standings? Is Sunbelt baseball, softball that good, or did we have that lofty of expectations for the Bobcats on softball and baseball fields?
Probably both. I would say both. I would say the Sun Belt is tough. It is very competitive in both baseball and softball, and it got tougher when they expanded and they added Southern Miss and Marshall and ODU and all these JMU. It just got even tougher with some of these additions. But I think for this season, specifically baseball, I don't know if softball had too high of expectations, but baseball did after what they did last season. This year, it's been very inconsistent. A lot of new guys, had some guys leave. They've had issues with pitching rotation due to injuries. Tristan Stivers leaving, the closer last year. That's kind of left a vacuum at the end of the lineup or the rotation, the pitching rotation, I should say. I think there's a lot of freshmen that are playing. Chase Mora for the Bobcats, he's having a terrific year, hitting home runs, but it's still a young guy, an experienced guy. And so I think that's where a lot of this inconsistency comes in. Now, before this past weekend where they lost 1-2 to Troy in the series and had that 22-5 blowout on Saturday, they were on a nice winning streak where they had beaten Texas and UTSA, who was ranked. I think they're still ranked at the time. It's a nice rivalry win for the baseball team. Nice win over a 25th ranked team. They had a sweep over Marshall that weekend. So they've shown that they can get it done, that they have the talent to really to get these wins, but it's just hard for them to maintain that consistency. And we'll see how it plays out. There's still time before the tournament, and see if they can get hot when they need to. Seems like that's been an issue with sports across the board for Texas State, where they have a terrific regular season and then they just can't get it done in the actual tournament. So we'll see if it's similar to basketball, where that was their issue and they flipped it this year. Had a bad regular season, good in the tournament. See if baseball can kind of get that going. But yeah, they were definitely expected to be closer to the top of the standings. But like you said, it's a crazy year. Some really good teams out there and a lot of parity in the Sun Belt right now. I mean, who knows? Any team in the top 8 could jump up to number 1, number 2. I mean, it's pretty crazy right now.
Keff, can't thank you enough for always joining us. Tell people how can they read your stuff and hear the golden pipes of Keff Ciardello.
Golden pipes, you oversell me too much. But you can check me out on Twitter at Keff_C. I do writing for the Statesman, writing about the Bobcats. I also talk about the Bobcats for a podcast I have, Win Now or Get Bent, which you affectionately like the title. Thank you very much. I'm a big fan of the FunBelt. I'm a big fan of the FunBelt pod as well. It's a fun title. But now check me out all over Twitter. I'm always tweeting too much, honestly. But thanks for having me, Dusty. This is always a blast to be on the FunBelt pod.
So there's the latest going on in San Marcos as the Bobcats have a new leader, a new team, and a new outlook as they get ready for the 2023 season. But one team that really, we already know what the future holds for them. Shane, you broke the story or added to the story that the Athletic broke earlier this week. JMU, they're not going to Shreveport. They're not going to New Orleans, Montgomery, or anywhere else this upcoming season. What's the latest with that postseason bowl ban, I guess you could call it?
Well, we'll back up just a sec because they could end up in one of those places if there aren't enough 6-win teams. They're going to be at the front of the line ahead of the APR 5 and 7 teams.
Okay.
So that's one thing to keep in mind. That if, like last year, where there were 2 spots to fill and they went to 5 and 7 Rice, JMU would be ahead of a team like that going into next year. With that said, they were not expecting to have to resort to that because really all along, since they got the Sun Belt invite, we're told they were going to be able to play a full Sun Belt schedule in year 1. The expectation was that because they played that full conference schedule, we're in the conference full on. that they had the resources and budget and success and everything else at the FBS level, they were going to be able to cut that transition period in half from 2 years to 1. That request ended up getting denied this week or last week, guess about a week ago. From a week ago, yeah. So that came as a little bit of a surprise, not as much as a surprise if you've been talking to people at JMU probably in the last month or so. I think they were starting to get like indications that it wasn't going to go their way, or it wasn't as much of a sure thing as they thought. They had the Sunbelt behind them, which I think they thought was going to, the Sunbelt office was pushing for it because, they want to have every opportunity for a bowl or major bowl, or,
It's embarrassing not to have a top team.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, why take anything out of your arsenal?
Absolutely.
Because you can look at it, there's probably at least a handful of teams that you can probably have a legitimate shot to win the conference. JMU's probably among them. And, so you're putting yourself in another situation where, possibly the best team wouldn't be eligible for a bowl. And so you don't want them playing in your conference championship game and taking that spot away from another team. So it's just, the Sun Belt didn't want to have to deal with that for a second year. They didn't think they were going to. JMU didn't think they were going to. But I think a lot of things have changed with the NCAA probably in the last 6 months. Good new president. They've changed. They've been less lenient on all kinds of different waivers, whether it's transfers, whatever. I think they're trying to rein in the Wild West feel of everything a little bit. And yeah, so they just ended up not granting that request. I don't think anybody at the NCAA also wants to deal with explaining why they felt like JMU could skip a year, but then deny Sam Houston or Kennesaw State or whoever. I think they just didn't want to open that can of worms. And surprising, I think, to most people at JMU, but in the end, it really only delays things about a year, and they might get into a bowl game anyway. So, I think it's probably not ended up being a huge deal.
I'll be the naysayer and say it.
Yep.
Boo-hoo. You knew what you were getting into when you decided to go D1.
Mm-hmm.
Pay your price, pay the pauper like the rest of us.
Yeah.
ULM's been in a constant state of transition for 25 years.
Let him heal.
No, kick him while he's down. Beat that horse until it can get up and try to gallop.
I actually wrote something the other day.
Hey, we saw that, yeah.
Along the lines of, okay, yeah, if you don't want to change the rules midway for JMU, I get that. What I don't get is why we do a transition period after you've already started playing at the next level to begin with. Whether it's Merrimack basketball going from D2 to D1, or JMU going FCS to FBS, or, here in Virginia, Emory and Henry went from D3 to D2, like whatever level it is, why are we doing the transition after you move up? Why can't we just vet these programs and decide if they're able to move up once they're approved? Why doesn't it start then? Why couldn't maybe you go through a 5-year period, like a vetting period, or 3 years or whatever, where you declare, hey, we're James Madison.
Okay.
If we get an invitation to a FBS conference, we would like to move up. So look at us for the next 5 years. Look at our average attendance, our budget, our facilities, our staffing, whatever criteria you think makes an FBS program. Evaluate us for the next 5 years. And if we get the invitation, we would like to move up. And if you think we're good enough, play right away. And I think that should be the case for anybody moving up at any level.
Listen, I can't let you continue this way because you're being very earnest, and I don't want you to make a fool out of yourself, because it's going to come out, Shane. And Tibbs and I already know this. We discussed this offline, and we discussed whether to tell you about this, but I think we should. The reason why James Madison wasn't granted that exemption is because there was a certain reporter, I'm not going to say who, but it was Shane Mettlen, that was insulting a lot of teams this offseason, just making a lot of enemies, and it rubbed the wrong rhubarbs for some very important people in the NCAA, Shane. So I'm not going to say who that guy was, Shane, but they made Appalachian State very angry. And when you make Appalachian State angry, it actually makes it to where it's like you can't play any more football in this town. Tibbs, I'm sorry that I had to tell him that way on air, but he needed to find out. He needed to find out from a friend.
I just want to know why, when he's talking about give us the vetting, make sure we're good, peel back the onion and look at us, the only thing I had popping in my mind was Enron.
What?
For some reason, where they were like, "Don't worry about it, just invest more. We're fine. We're fine."
Yeah. No. Because, are you saying that there's a seedy underbelly to JMU that we don't quite know about yet?
Quite possibly. Maybe that's why the NCAA knows something that we don't.
Are the JMU's finances okay, Shane?
As far as I know, but. Yeah,
is paying your electric bill.
I think the NCAA came and made a visit to look at everything. So who knows? Maybe they found something that was disturbing. I don't know.
Maybe some SAT, ACT scandals on the horizon.
Who knows?
Anyway,
if you play that documentary backwards, where they talk about the people that were rowing in air quotes to get into Stanford, if you play it backwards, it's really about James Madison.
Oh my God. Suddenly minus is plus and plus is minus. Everything makes sense. Anyway, it's stupid that James Madison has to go through all these hoops and stuff. I feel like they've proven themselves. I know Thibodeaux doesn't care because he's heartless, but I do care, Shane. I feel like the Dukes belong in a bowl game if they win the prerequisite amount of games, which they generally do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could go either way on giving JMU a waiver, but I just feel like there's so many teams. We're seeing this, happen other places. We've seen it with multiple basketball teams that went D2 to D1, and the general public doesn't like it. They think if you win, let them play, which I can agree with, but yeah, if you thought they were good enough or prepared enough to make the jump from D2 to D1, then just let that stand. Once you start playing at that level, I think you should just be all in.
Did Noah Fleischman break down in tears when he got the news?
Not that I'm aware of.
I want to be careful with him.
Yeah.
He's young, he's impressionable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe emotional. I don't know. I just look out for him. Shane, I need you to be his mentor, his guiding hand.
We'll take good care of him.
So speaking of taking care of it and stupid as well.
Is this going to be another great Thibodeaux segue?
How do we mute Jeremy?
You can't.
Ben Carr, the all-around, all-American Masters representation from Georgia Southern, your golfer of the year, Jeremy.
Ooh, yeah. Georgia Southern had a great year. They were good with the sticks. I believe the men's team won the FunBelt tournament. Am I right?
Yeah, I think they won the men's side.
Women's side. Women's side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. ULM won the women's side.
Got a trophy.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like there's some tennis news in there too. Like, I want to say the Old Dominion doubles team is going to the NCAAs. I think I saw that.
I think I saw that. It was either singles or doubles. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the JAG men might be instant qualifiers.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't follow Sunbelt tennis, partly because A-State tennis is really historically a bad program. I mean, it's just a horrendous program right now. And I tried to become the tennis coach. I don't know if you remembered that. But I put in my application to be the tennis coach this year, and it was denied. And the price is that A-State tennis came in dead last. So I'm thinking maybe Jeff Puritan, the athletic director, might be reconsidering my application. So I'll let you guys know. I might not be able to do the podcast anymore. I might be coaching women's tennis at Arkansas State.
You'll be sorely missed.
Okay. Yeah.
And Shane, send up the bat signal. We need a reliever.
Yeah.
I'll maybe get Noah. Maybe
we'll have a great guest. We like to have coaches on. So Jeremy will make a great guest.
I would love just to talk tennis for about 30 minutes. You know, the aces, the backswings, you know, all sorts of stuff that's related to tennis.
Yeah. I'm sure you're great at teaching those backswings.
Man, I am dynamite at that. Yeah, it's my best move, the old backswing.
And Arkansas State is still dead last in softball.
We don't have a team, Thibodeaux. You bring that up all the time. It hurts. It's
good.
Like you're putting your salty thumb into a festering wound in my soul. And
speaking of being wounded,
yeah. Okay,
it is definitely time for Plugs Promos parting shots. Jeremy, what do you have for us?
Well, all right. So I was going to talk about the length of the NFL draft. 7 rounds, which isn't long, but 3 days? Are you kidding me? This has to be 3 days, Tibbs. Why can't this be 2 days? Yeah, I'm fine having 1 day for the first round. Okay, let's make it pomp and circumstance. Let's really blow up the egos of these kids. Let's have, big time announcers do all these dumb stories about the backgrounds of all these guys getting drafted. I don't care. That's fine. But 2 days for rounds 2 through 7? Why can't we get this going? But that's actually not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about an achievement I made tonight before the podcast. Something that I never thought was possible, but it did happen to me. I posted a story on howrazor.com. And then in turn, I posted it on Twitter so people could read it. And the title of the story is "The NFL Draft is a Power 5 Orgy Again." And I talk about all the paranoid stuff I talked earlier about the NFL draft. And Twitter hit me with a warning. It said, "We put a warning on this tweet because it might have sensitive content."
Thank you, Elon, for protecting us.
From my orgy is what he's protecting you from. So rest assured, Sunbelt Nation, if you are to open that, it's not about, like some sort of 70s hairy-chested orgy. It's just about the Power 5 being way too prevalent in the NFL draft.
Shane, tough act to follow as always, but please lay it on us.
It really is. I'm just going to go with the promo because I can't top that.
Oh, anybody can
I have no orgies to talk about. So just check out dnronline.com/sports and read about all the JMU and Sunbelt stuff we have.
They don't do orgies in the Northeast. It's too cold. That's more of a Southern thing. I mean, that's what they do in Houston, right, Tibbs?
I have no idea. On another note,
okay,
just when we thought we were past the lockdowns and the COVID,
yeah,
and we were getting some quality movies, some quality TV shows,
yes,
the damn Writers Guild of America have gone on strike.
Yeah,
that means production is stopping. And we will all be forced to rewatch Tiger King once again to see if Carol Baskin really did kill her husband.
Oh, she totally killed her husband.
No, you missed the news. He's alive. He's been alive.
They found him?
I'm pretty sure I saw that.
No way.
It was in the National Enquirer, so it's really there. Him and Elvis were hanging out together.
He's totally inside the stomach of a tiger. That's got to be where he is. I tell you what, though, that writer strike, one of the things that they're worried about, the writers, they want more money, of course. Everybody wants more money. And as a writer, I'm all for that. But they're really worried about AI. And you might be thinking, Shane, I don't know how deeply you've investigated this, but like I'm a writer, I in advertising, which isn't like a real writer. It's like a joke writer almost. But, I write like press releases, for instance. It's part of my job. So somebody just as a joke said, well, let's have ChatGPT write this press release. I was like, oh, shit. And ChatGPT did a pretty good job. And I got a little nervous. So
it's a little concerning.
Yes, it is concerning. I mean, you make your living, Shane, with the written word. Yeah. It could be ChatGPT pounding out your insight in the next 5 years. And I kind of blame you, Tibbs. You're in the cyber community, right? You're a cyber guy. This is part of your fault. Why can't you protect us from this?
Yeah, but I still try to dictate into my iPhone, and it talks about, instead of the Orangeman of Syracuse, it talks about the orgy. So we're back to that, Jeremy.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. 1 purchased equals 1 donated. Now go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.